In her book, Grandfather's Blessings, Dr. Rachel Naomi Raymond shares a story about her mother and red ribbons and loving life. Her mother tied red ribbons all around her crib when she was born. And as she grew older, Naomi would find tiny little 2-inch red ribbons in the pockets of her coat, in the pockets of her pants, in her lunch pail. They were all over the place. Now, she never took them out and left them away. She just found them and would put them back. She knew that they were there to protect her. You see, her mother was Russian, and she believed in the evil eye. Can I give you an evil eye? Her mother continued this habit long after Naomi had left her home. In fact, she never quite knew how her mother managed to get the little tiny 2-inch ribbons into the places that she did, but she managed. And one day she was cleaning out one of her old purses and she came across a red 2-inch ribbon at the bottom of the purse. And she was amazed because her mother had been dead for 10 years already. And so she realized how long that ribbon had been there. She remembered that this was really about her family's worldview, because a large percentage of her family's communication was about saving each other from danger. Be careful when you drive. Watch your step wherever you're going. Don't drive too fast. Don't talk to strangers. Naomi thought that this was what her family was all about, presenting a united front against risk, or offering each other a vigilant eye against the evil eye. And when she became a doctor, she saw the same vigilance in the medical community. Perhaps such watchfulness is an inside-out way of saying life is vulnerable and life is important. Too important to lose or misplace. Now, you see, there is a huge difference between defending life and befriending life. Defending life is all too often about holding on to whatever you have at all cost. Befriending life may be about strengthening and supporting life's movement towards its own wholeness. It requires us to take great risks, to go over and over again and again. It's about surrendering to life our own dreams of itself. Not too long ago, Dr. Carolyn and I were on our way to our bridge game. It's something that our good friends Ron and Sharon Whitman have taught us. Personally, I have taken it up to open up new pathways in my brain as I continue to age. That's something we need to do as we age, is to learn those new skills. And by the way, I'm looking for a knitting teacher if anybody wants to volunteer. I need a new pathway in my brain. And as we were driving along, the topic of aging came up, and Carolyn immediately said, "I'm aging, I am never getting old." And I immediately concurred with her, remembering how a friend of mine had always called herself, "Oh, Eileen, Eileen, it's so terrible getting old like we are." And I said, "I'm not old." We both commented, Carolyn and I, on how so many people hide their age as though it is something to be ashamed of. Have you ever noticed how a 12-year-old doesn't tell you they're 12? "I'm 12 and a half. Or "I'm going to be 14 in 2 months. August 16th, as a matter of fact." They gratefully tell you how old they are, as though by stating it, it pushes them ahead. They are proud of their age and have nothing to hide. And there was a time when famous people in Hollywood and politics and whatever they were in would never, ever share their age as though they were ashamed of it. Now that's impossible anymore because of the internet. All you have to do is look in Wikipedia, and they will give you somebody's birth date. Carolyn quoted another author, Frances Wilshire, who wrote a pamphlet that is called You, and she and I both went on the internet to try and find it. She found it for 125. I found it on eBay for 500. If you'd like to donate, come up afterwards. Frances wrote how she looked in the mirror one day and thought that she looked old. And then as she began to think about it, she remembered that we are all of one mind. She knew there was no age in God, and if she was one with God, then she could not possibly be old. She began to think and speak differently about her age. Frances affirmed that there is no age in me at all. You see, we don't have to view ourselves as getting old. The truth is, we have all been arguing or aging since the day we were born. We all have a beginning, and we all have an ending. How we choose to live between that point of beginning and ending is entirely up to us. Our bodies often remind us that we're changing and aging, and some folks worship the idea of staying young forever. There's Botox to paralyze our face muscles so that the wrinkles don't show. Or Restylane is an injection to fill the sags and the wrinkles that have started to appear. Some of us dye our hair to avoid the gray, while others grow their hair a little bit long to cover the skin on the top of their head, while others go for facelifts or chin lifts or whatever. Have you ever noticed how the teeth whitening ads are always young people, never someone my age? And it works, of course, perfectly for them. A lot of people will spend a great deal of money and time to avoid the aging process. I chuckled to myself as I was writing this lesson because I realized how many facial creams I have lined up on my counter in the master bathroom. Aging actually is about new beginnings. It's new beginnings when we begin to view our aging process in a positive rather than a negative way. Whether you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 70, 80, 90, we begin to look at it in a new way. New beginnings are present and usually for a long time there before we even notice them. Often we don't choose a new beginning, but rather it may choose us because of the death or the loss of a job. In the instance of myself, I had been losing my ability to hear for years, and yet I didn't notice it. Only when I got hearing aids did I realize for how long I had been watching people's lips to read them rather than to hear them. Often our new beginnings lay just below the surface of our life, waiting for us to recognize and acknowledge it. Indeed, aging is a new beginning and not always one we want to welcome. Our theme for 2023 is Be Your Authentic True Self. And several of us have been reading the book I showed you, This Thing Called You, which supports our journey to authenticity. In it, Ernest Holmes states the barriers between you and your greater good are not barriers in themselves. They are things of thought. It is the great law of life. It is done unto us as we believe. Now, in the book, Healing Your Grief About Aging, Alan Wolfett and Kirby Duval tell us to embrace the fact that you cannot be young forever. Nothing is constant but change. Our bodies, for example, every 80 to 100 days will replenish 30 trillion cells, which is the equivalent of a new you. And yet we don't see or feel any of that in the process of those cells being renewed. We can be happier, healthier, and age more gracefully when we recognize that we cannot be young forever. And it's okay to grieve that process. Marcel Proust once said, "The voyage of discovery is not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes." Regardless of your age, become a lifelong learner. Learning a new skill at any age has a specific and definite impact on your brain that scientists now know about. After you learn something new, whether you are 9 or 90, your brain is never, ever the same. When we learn something new, our brain forms new connections and neurons and makes an existing new neural pathway stronger or creates something new. Some experts call these changes plasticity in the brain. And our brain continues to change right up until the very end of our life. The more you learn about the way, the more your brain will change and the more plasticity it will have. Pick something you have always wanted to learn. Find someone who can teach you or take a class. If all else fails, turn to YouTube. They have a plethora of how-to videos. When you are done with one class, keep going. Find something else to take. Find something else to learn. Make your learning a lifelong habit. Meet the new with curiosity and find fun in the learning. As Dr. Holmes tells us, your mind is an outlet through which the creative intelligence of the universe seeks fulfillment. My dad was an incredible storyteller. About 10 years before he passed, I came in for Father's Day and handed him a journal and asked him to write down all the family stories that he had always been telling at family gatherings for years. Before too long, he was asking for a second journal, and he only stopped writing in it when the neuropathy in his hand made it impossible to read. I am so grateful that the family stories and the history are not lost and that they can be passed on for generations to come. Holmes tells us, you are a spontaneous, self-choosing center in life in the great drama of being, the great joy of becoming, the certainty of eternal expansion. Life will be to you what you are to it. And your intellect, environment, everyday experience, there is accumulated experience of your subconscious mind, the accumulated thoughts and feelings of the ages operating within you and through you. Don't let that get lost. Make sure it's there, whether you do it by video or tape. Allow it to move on for generations. As we age with grace, Wolfett and Duvall tell us to go back to your roots. Rewind your life. Scroll back through your memories and see it as though your life is a movie. Be sure to relive the highlights, recall some of the characters who travel with you, and embrace just how far you have traveled. Honor how far you have come. You have survived difficulties and lost as well, and actually have had a lot of wonderful experiences. Think about the themes in your life. This is your life story, and it is a story of value. Cherish it. Write it down. Holmes provides a learning scenario for us in his book. Imagine you're looking at a gorgeous and beautiful landscape pictures. The mountains are beautiful. They're snow-capped and they're surrounded by deep blue skies with clouds in them. There's trees and a home in it and a stream that runs through the path and a beautiful meadow in front of the mountains. And all of a sudden, some idiot walks in and puts a smoky piece of glass in front of it. Now, the picture is distorted, and yet nothing about that picture has changed. And it is up to you to remove the glass so that once again it is clear. Your faith can penetrate clouds of unbelief and reveal the truth, which is forever perfect. Your words do not create this truth, they merely reveal it. As Holmes say, our truth reveals it. And to know the greater truth of the divine as well as to age with grace and confidence, we must face ourselves with honesty. Who is your real, authentic self? How do you act in public with certain people and why? Do you have unfinished business to tend to? Maybe it's a relationship that needs mending or an apology to make. Be honest with yourself without judgment. We tend so hard to want to use that terrible thing called judgment. Stop yourself. The situation, stop putting yourself, the situation, or another person down. Challenge yourself to be authentic in all of your relationships. Admitting a mistake helps us to release regrets. When you're honest with yourself, you develop a genuine level of truth. This is your truth as well as the truth of spirit. The greatest book or greatest gift you will ever give yourself is letting go of your fears. To do this, you must be honest with yourself and own your truth. Don't suppress it, just conquer it. Duvall tells us that we must learn to befriend our fears and hurts. Doing this will let us age with integrity and grace. Matthew 16:25 states, "And whoever loses his life for my sake shall find it." Dr. Holmes points out that this statement is not about losing our actual life, but rather to let go of the lesser in order to experience the greater. If we lose our unhappiness, then what happens? We become happy. If we lose confusion, then what happens? We become peaceful. Life has its ups and downs. It has, however, brought us where we are this day. Stop challenging and questioning your journey. Trust it and know you are on your divine right path. This is the journey that you're on right now, regardless of your age, regardless of your past. So open your mind and heart to learn all the lessons in life that you need to learn. Yes, when we reflect on our life, we see places we would have chosen to, or things to do differently. Maybe we would have married someone else, or maybe not married at all. We might have picked a different profession or lived in a different town. We are all on our right journey. It is important that we begin to let go of the lesser, so the inner peace and the happiness emerges as our new self on this new beginning. Stay focused on the positive outcomes of your journey and not the negative or the challenges you've experienced. James Dean once said, "Dream as if you live forever, live as if you'll die tomorrow." And remember, he died young. Trust your journey and let go of your fears. Remember that your new beginning is living is how you are meant to, not necessarily what you want to. Thich Nhat Hanh, as a boy one day, looked into a very large water-filled clay jar. And as he looked down, he saw this very large and beautiful multicolored leaf, and he tried to get to it, but he realized that it was too deep, and he reached for a stick, and he went with the stick and tried to pull it out and get it to come up, and he'd swirl the water, and the leaf would swirl around at the bottom. And he gave it one big more swirl, hoping that that leaf would become accessible to him. And he walked away, giving it after he gave one more swirl. And when he returned in a few moments, the leaf had swirled easily and effortlessly to the surface of the water, and he picked it out to cherish it. The water had continued to swirl while he was away and brought that leaf up for him. And this is how our unconscious works. When we have a problem to solve, struggling with our conscious mind becomes futile. And sometimes we find ourselves in the endless motion of nothingness. We must learn to swirl the water and then step away from the moment and know that if we trust our journey, if we trust the new beginnings, if we are honest with ourselves and continue with a willingness to learn, our remaining years, whether they're 1 or 100, will be filled with ease and grace. As we complete today, I'd like to leave you with a simple affirmation I hope that you'll use every day. In fact, write it down and put it on a Post-it note and stick it on your bathroom mirror. That's where it is for me. A couple of years ago, someone was interviewing Clint Eastwood, and he was still directing and acting in a new movie. And the interviewer was marveling at his stamina and his ability to continue this taxing work and schedule, even though Clint Eastwood was in his early 90s. I looked it up yesterday. He's 93 now. So tell me, Mr. Eastwood, what is your secret to staying so young? Asked the reporter. Clint replied, it's really quite easy. Every morning I get up and look at myself in the mirror and say, don't let that old man in today, Clint. So write it out. Put it on a Post-it note. Put it up there for you to say, I will not let that old man or woman in today. I will age with ease and grace. This is the truth in my life, and this is the truth in yours, and so it is.